Hi, everybody. This is Takeshi, and then Kasia-san. We are Shushoku Cafe. We talk about Japan-related job and how to use your Japanese skill and how you can enjoy your interest to be connected in Japanese company. And then we every week, every time we pick some topic which we are often questioned about it. And today we will talk about logistic industry and the supply chain industry, which is a great opportunity for someone who wants to start their career or something like that. So I have many questions to ask for logistic and supply chain. So I'd like to start asking some questions. What does the supply chain mean?
Yes, this is actually a very interesting but overwhelming meaning and definition. So basically, think about anything that you can purchase online that you want to order and have it delivered to your house. That thing, that finished product, it has to go through companies, organizations, people are involved in making it. There's lots of activities, and everything that starts from the raw material to that end product. That's what supply chain means. And it includes many stages such as the production, the transportation, the distribution, and it's really kind of wide-ranging. So when we talk about supply chain jobs, this could mean a lot of things.
Yeah, that's right. Because sometimes when I have some position about supply chain from our client, sometimes it's more analyzed for the demand and what's the supply. And sometimes it's more like a logistic-wise, how to coordinate for the logistic-wise. And sometimes it's more purchasing things, like you negotiate with a vendor or something like that. So a little bit broad wide and depend on the position may be different, okay? Okay.
Yeah.
And how about for the logistics means?
So logistics basically gets confused often with supply chain and logistics. And I'm not going to go into the specifics because I am not an expert in this topic. And if there was somebody watching who is a logistics or supply chain expert, I'm sure you can go into great detail. But it basically kind of means the same thing. Logistics management is something that holds the supply chain together. So you deal with like efficiency and the flow of goods and services, and it's kind of like a, very hard definition to think about, but think of them kind of as the same, where you're trying to take a look and see how to help make things get made and sold, like shared from one country of origin to where it's being sold at. It's just a very exciting way to see how some product gets made and sent to you.
Yeah, you're right. And I think from my experience, like in United States for Japanese company, my feeling, 80 or 90% of Japanese company is doing somehow importing or exporting some product between Japan and the US. So I always give the advice for the candidate who wants to start their career and who wants to have a wide option in the future. What this experience could be happen is logistic doesn't mean you have to be a logistic industry all the time, something like that. When you have experience in the logistics industry, import or export or coordinated experiences, that could be happen in the future. If you're interested in a game industry, they import, export the game software or something like that. Or if you're interested in some food industry, or if you're interested in some specific toys, they all have some logistic or purchasing positions internally in their company. So it's wider up for your opportunity. And then a lot of the time, I think logistic company, they have tendency hiring from entry level because they are having the culture about training about it, and the training system is already on in there. So it's a great opportunity to build your career and widen up your opportunities. Yeah. So another question is, I know you explained me about the meetings about supply chain and logistics, but do you have any example? What kind of the positions is there?
Well, you just gave a great example of the gaming industry. So let's think of the gaming industry. And actually, we had a video about this as well. So we'll add a link in the comments so that you can take a look at our short video about that as well. But let's say you are purchasing a physical game, whether now they're all digital or not now. I'm not a gamer, so apologies for that. Let's envision an actual game. You have to have various people involved, and there's lots of different job titles out there. So I'm just going to give a few examples. So for example, let's say you are a warehouse operator. You're working in the warehouse that maybe needs to, put together the games and the cases and the packaging around it. So let's say that could be a great entry-level opportunity, maybe even a great part-time role if you're in school or just looking to see what else there is. You are an important member of this supply chain because you are helping in the warehouse to put it all together. Another role could be a logistics coordinator, for example. This encompasses a lot of responsibilities, but you're just kind of making sure that everything is being shipped on time. You're looking at Excel sheets or what other program you're using. You're making sure that everything is working properly in order for this product to be produced or later shipped. You could also be a customer service representative. I mean, these people are so important to know about the product themselves. If anybody calls, whether it's another company in the supply chain process or the end customer, a customer service representative also knows a great portion of that supply chain process and can help answer questions. Also, there's a role called a production scheduler, and this is somebody who could be really good with either Excel sheets or any kind of program that you're using to make sure that everything is working out properly. Because when you have a manufacturing process and you're putting something together or making it, you want to be sure that you're not wasting time, because time is money in manufacturing, especially in a production. So you want to be sure that everything is being timed with as little downtime as possible, that all the employees, the operators on the floor perhaps, are also doing things and not kind of sitting there bored. So a production scheduler also has a very important role in making sure that everything is working properly and is also not late for the next customer who's waiting for those products. Another role is purchasing analyst or agent. And I will kind of add that to the next category of inventory control. If you are in a purchasing department, or if you're overseeing inventory, you also want to make sure that there's not too much of a product and not too little of a product. So just making sure that everything is working out fine there is very important. And lastly, another example that I'll give is a sourcing specialist. So let's say you are putting together the outside of this game that we're talking about, whether it's cardboard, whether it's plastic. You need to have companies to go to find, to create that container, to print on it. All of that stuff is also very important. And of course, depending on the industry, sometimes it can be extremely expensive because you're dealing with raw material or something that's, a very prized product or resource that's out there.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned is what we have a lot usually, especially logistic coordinator or customer support for the logistic company or purchasing is what we have a lot. And then in other angle is if you are the person who wants to be you want to be international businesses connected with the country, you always dealing with a different country, Mexico or Asian country or Japan, to connect in there. And also a good point for those positions is it's in everywhere. So in the future, if you have to relocate for somewhere, something like that, you start your career maybe in Illinois, in Chicago, for logistic coordinator. Somehow, nobody knows life can change, and then you end up moving to New York. For sure, there's tons of logistic coordinator, customer support rep, something like that. So once you have that skills, it comes to with you, and you can use that skill in the different areas as well. So that is kind of job existing for those positions. It's in everywhere, always. And then what do you think, if you're interested for those positions, what kind of skills do you need to have for apply for those positions? Do you have some samples, Kasia-san?
Yes, I have some examples. And of course, as we mentioned, the supply chain idea itself is huge. But let's just talk about a few, especially when it comes to more entry level, just getting into the industry and getting more familiar with what's out there. I would say that a lot of companies still use Excel, especially a lot of Japanese companies in their purchasing departments. Excel is huge. And there's the functions and the formulas that you can use in there. It's good to have that kind of knowledge. Of course, there's also other software that I'm sure some companies are using. They're integrating AI into it. So there's lots of other softwares that you can probably research depending on, if you wanted to look at a job ad and see what kind of software is mentioned there, see what's listed and then go online and take a look and see if you can learn a little bit about it just to become familiar with it. There's so many platforms out there. But also, you need to be able to see the bigger picture because being a part of the supply chain is one moving part of many moving parts. So it's very helpful if you also can kind of take a step back and see what you're doing and how it's important and how it affects everybody that's connected to your processes. Also, I think math skills can be important sometimes too, especially when you're dealing with logistics. And lastly, I'll mention flexibility and the willingness to adapt is so important because the supply chain depends on so many factors in the entire world. So if there's weather issues in one area, or if there's, a big disaster in another area, you know that you have to, especially if you're working on sourcing or anything that deals with the importing and exporting in those areas, you have to kind of be willing and able to just think on your feet and be like, all right, that's not working. We have this roadblock. What can we do to kind of make things work on our side anyway? So those are my tips. If there's anything else you'd like to add, please do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And usually when I recommend for the logistic industry or supply chain industry for the candidate who is trying to go into the corporate industry or like creating a new career, when I talk with somebody who is very communicative, good for coordinating with that person, but not willing to go for sales. Sales is a little bit too much for them, but they are happy to be connecting, coordinating with others. That's good skill set. If you're for that person, I strongly recommend for that. And also, who is not quite sure yet, what they want to do in the future, but they don't want to they want to keep a wide option in the future is a logistic. Because as I mentioned, when you have experience from the logistic, most of the company need that experiences, need that knowledge about how the things is moving internationally. So for those person, it's also I recommend for that. And as you said, a little bit of a flexibility, willing to adapt the things because so many dealing with several projects at the same time and go with the flow a little bit and coordinating about it. If you have those skill set, like a soft skill, then you're good to go starting with a entry level position and then you're going to have that training in there. That is what I am thinking, who is good for those positions. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, to know about logistic and supply chain and what kind of position and what skill you need or something like that. But do you have something that you can put in? Because I think you have experiences working as a purchasing department or something like that. So can you add on, from your experience, what do you recommend for those industries?
Oh my goodness, I had such an interesting job working at an electronics manufacturer, and I was in the purchasing department. I was supporting with interpreting, but because I was interpreting many facets of what was happening, I was learning deeply about what the purchasing department was doing. And I love to puzzle, and I don't know if this makes sense to anybody else, but for me, this was a puzzle because you had to make sure when we walked out onto our warehouse that we had just enough parts. If we had too many, then it would be, you also don't want to have too few things because then you might cause a line stop in the production line. When it stops, that's not a good thing. So we were always kind of in this balance. And it was, to me, it was almost like a fun game to realize how much can we, what can we do to make sure that if the shipments are delayed, that we're going to have enough to not cause a line stop. And then what can we do in case there are damaged products that we have in our warehouse, the parts that get put together into the electronics product, or the packaging that goes around it, the styrofoam, the cardboard. We were in charge of making sure that the cardboard had the correct, color of the product, the logo, the naming, the instructions. All of that was a part of this. And it was actually really interesting to me. So yes, we had to use Excel, mainly because the headquarters that were coming from Japan, they were used to Excel, but this was a few years back. So I think now there's other systems that are being implemented, keeping in mind that it takes a lot to implement a new system. So Excel still works great. And then just trying to figure out how to use the functions and the formulas to make sure everything is going to be great and on time. And then when you see the final finished product come out, you're just like, wow, I did not realize that much time and effort and people went into putting together something that we just randomly pick up at the store and think it's, X $100 or whatever. We just buy it and bring it home without thinking what like amount of love has to go into that. So that was my experience. How about you, Takeshi-san? Any final words for our video?
Okay, so as my personal experiences, I started my career as an international sales for the construction machinery. And even the exporting those items, the basic things you have to learn at the beginning was logistic. Because you have to know, you want to sell something, but you have to know how you're going to ship it out, how you're going to export it. So it was very important basic, which I needed right at the beginning of my career. And thanks for that. After that, I was working as a business development for the organic food industry and dental industries in US. That knowledge was always a great experience, great knowledge. Thanks for that. I could create the businesses because if you don't know how to import, how to send it to the client, those or coordination, if you can't make it, then you can't create the businesses. So I'm very thankful that I had a base understanding and experience about the logistics. So I really want to recommend for everybody, who is willing to be open up their opportunity. Logistics and supply chain is a great opportunity.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that's great. And I hope that if you're watching this video, maybe you'll take a look differently at these job ads that come up and say either supply chain or import export or logistics, or warehouse or production management. Take a look at these titles in a slightly different way and see, just like Tak said, you can learn so much. And those skills will apply to so many industries and other future roles.
Yeah, you're right. And then, of course, you can scan and then check for the Ikigai connection. There's so many examples of the positions. And also in Quick USA, we have a lot of positions in our website. Please check it out. And if you have any question, we're going to leave links in our comment as well. Feel free to contact with us. And we are very happy to answer your question. And in the YouTube channels, we have so many different videos as well for different industries and different concepts. Most of the questions happen. So please check it on the video and please give us some feedback as well. All right. So thank you again for today. And we hope to see you soon for the different chapters.
Bye.
Bye.